Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Pond. I'm the awards editor at TheWrap. And welcome to TheWrap's awards season screening series, Actors Showcase. Obviously, we're used to doing this in person, but let's give it a shot this way. We're going to kick off tonight with some clips from the 5 shows, and then we'll go into a Q&A with Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley, Yvonne Orji from Insecure, Alex Newell from Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, Maitreyi Ramakrishnan, from Never Have I Ever, and Paul Mescal from Normal People. Before we start, a few quick notes. I'll talk to the panelists for about 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up to audience questions for another 20 minutes or so. So we encourage you to participate in those. You can add your questions in the comments section, which is to the right of the screen, and our team will post them for the panelists to see and answer. Also, if you want to make sure you're invited to future events, please check out our membership service, Wrap Pro. And before we meet the panelists, let's show some clips.
Hola.
Hola.
Can I see your key card, please?
Oh, I don't have it with me.
Oh, no. I need to see it to give you a towel.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm staying here. I just literally got out of the pool.
Unfortunately, without your key card, I cannot give you a towel. Hotel policy.
Are you serious? Because the white people that just left did not need to show a key card.
Mom, I don't know what you're accusing me of, but as you can see...
If you don't just give me a towel...
Okay, you need to calm down or I'm going to have to get my manager.
Over a key card?
Room 328? She's good.
It sounds difficult. I don't really click with a lot of people. I struggle with that, actually.
Do you think that's a new problem? Or is it familiar to you?
It's familiar. I would say in school I definitely felt that feeling of isolation or whatever, but people seem to like me, everything, and here I don't think that people like me that much. Like with Rob, my friend, who I wouldn't say that we clicked on a very deep level or anything, but we were friends. I wouldn't say that we had a lot in common in terms of interests or anything, and definitely not politically, not that we ever really examined that, but that stuff didn't really matter in school. Because we were in the same group of friends, so you know.
I understand that.
And he did some stuff that I wouldn't have been a fan of in terms of like with girls, but we were 18, you know, we just we acted like idiots. I think I felt a bit alienated by that stuff. And I think I thought if I moved here, I'd fit in better. I thought I'd meet more like-minded people, but that just hasn't. I left Carricklee thinking I could have a different life. But I hate it here, and I can never go back. Because those friendships are gone, and Rob is gone, and I can't see him again. I can't get that life back. I'm sorry.
You don't need to apologize.
Okay, we're back. It's my pleasure to introduce Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley, Yvonne Orji from Insecure, Alex Newell from Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, Maitreyi Ramakrishnan from Never Have I Ever, and Paul Mescal from Normal People. Welcome, everybody. Congratulations on your shows. Maitreyi, congratulations on getting picked up for season 2 yesterday.
Thank you.
And Paul, thanks for staying up late for us. We realize it's after midnight in London, so we appreciate you making a late night of this.
No, not at all.
Obviously, these are wildly different shows, and I was thinking about these 5 shows and trying to find sort of common threads. And one thing that struck me is that they're all involved this season in storylines about friendships that are fraying and being tested, and beyond that, stories about sort of finding connection and community. And I feel like, we live in a time of isolation when maybe those kinds of stories matter to us more than ever. So I just want to start with a general question for everybody, which is, do you think the role of television changes at a time like this? And
I think
anybody who wants to jump in?
I think it's necessary, and probably now more than ever in a time like this, if not for the escapism of it all, just to help keep sanity. But then also it's also, I don't know, I think once we come out of this, we need to know what stories we should be telling that are even more poignant than the ones we have been telling before, or if we've been doing a great job with the ones we have been telling. So I think it's kind of a really dope litmus test of where we are.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean,
it's a big question, Steve. That's a big question.
I know it is, Thomas.
Yvonne killed it right there. It's deep
But
thought.
it's truly, it's escapism. I mean, we're all inside the entire time, and we're looking for what outside looks like at the end of the day, and to forget that we're all not stuck inside, that we all are safe inside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, let's just go around then and deal not with the big picture, but with the specifics of each show. What was the biggest challenge for you this season? And Thomas, I mean, it was obviously your last season on the air. You got to stick the landing. But what were the biggest challenges of this season of Silicon Valley?
I mean, the true challenges of that show always kind of boil down to that writer's room of how are they going to weave, this social commentary of tech along with this will they pass fail entrepreneur story that they wanted to tell while making everybody laugh. I was fortunate enough to just get to show up and say the lines. The biggest challenge for me is like keeping it together on those last days of shooting, because it was such a memorable experience being on a show like that. It was, my first big show on television. I made a lot of, lifelong friends, and Yeah, in that respect, just taking a moment, appreciating what a lovely gift that was to experience that and share that story and send it on its way like a dead Viking out to sea. And then I'll shoot my flaming bow and arrow and set it ablaze. Onward to Valhalla, Silicon Valley.
Well, that's Maitreyi. You're not at the beginning of a show. You're at at the end of a show. You're at the beginning of a show and the beginning of a career. I mean, you've never really acted, and you get to star in a Netflix series. So what were the challenges for you this season?
Well, every single day is a new day for me, because I have had to learn like everything. So every single day on set, it was a matter of like, okay, now how do we tackle on this scene? Like, what are like the logistics about getting to the scene to get it to a point where it's like really good? And I know personally, my biggest fear, because aside from this whole big change in my life, was tackling on crying scenes. I was like, oh my God, like that's what real actors do. I don't know if I can cry on camera. And Mindy Lang, they were like, hey, like you can try menthol sticks, we can put like glycerin, and I'm like, no, I'm doing this. And I practiced so much like at home trying to figure out how to cry on command. So I remember every single time those scenes would come up and I watch them now and there's like friends watching it with me, I just make them like stare at me as I cry. I'm like, you see that? I'm crying on command. So yeah, as crazy as that sounds, that was my biggest challenge that I'm really proud of now.
Mm-hmm.
You did a great job.
Thanks.
Yeah, you totally cried.
You're a real life actor.
Well, Yvonne, what about you? I mean, you've been doing Insecure for a couple seasons. What was, although this season, obviously the relationship between Molly and Issa kind of changed dramatically. What were there particular challenges for you this season?
Yeah, not acting with my best friend. There's that. No, that was definitely rough because we're such a glue in the fabric of the stories, and not acting opposite her. And then when we were together, it was like a strained relationship. It was like, dang, I gotta be mad at you when I see you, and then half the time I'm not seeing you. Who wrote this? Oh, you did. So that was definitely a difference this season. But this was the first season I got my first standalone episode, and that was both exciting and challenging because it was actually the last episode we shot. So everyone else wrapped, and then I still had to work, and then it was also shot. It was the first time we were international shooting. So all the elements that go into like not being on like home base with the cast and crew that you're normally used to. And oh, by the way, there can be no reshoots because we're not coming back here. And it's like, oh yeah, no pressure. We can do this in 2.5 days. Yeah, no biggie.
Right. So you shot the Mexico sequence in 2.5 days.
4. But plus or minus a couple of everything was like sunlight dependent, so it's like, oh, okay, so the sun is going down, got it.
Right. So Alex, I mean, for you, what were the challenge? I mean, the obvious one is that you're not just acting, you're singing a whole lot of songs in this show as well, but what were particular challenges for you?
Just the shoot days in general, trying to put a 45-minute musical television show together in 8 days. That is absurd. And how fast paced it is. And it's coming from Glee and coming to this, we had 12 days, maybe 10 days for Glee. And then having 8 to do the same amount of work is just so outlandish and crazy. And probably we had a 7-minute season closer of just one shot, and you had to be perfect. Like you just had to be perfect. I think that was like all of that time was the hardest thing about the show this season.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Paul, what about you? I mean, it's this lovely intimate show about the relationship between a couple of people, but they're kind of frustrating people because they never come out and say what they should be saying to each other. So I mean, what were your challenges?
Yeah, I think it was like every day was a school day as well, and it definitely felt to me it was actually after the fact that we had shot it. That was kind of when the majority of the anxiety came, because I think that's when the book started to become popular in the US, and I just felt the kind of weight of pressure from the fans of the book kind of percolating into something in which I had no control over. Like everything was in the can, and there's that kind of horrible wait time, and I also really struggled with kind of going from 5 months day in day out working incredibly closely with Daisy and Lenny and Hetty and also the crew, and then that being essentially gone or changed to a certain extent. So I found the period actually between the shoot and the TX just really difficult to navigate, and it's slightly odd.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what was it that made you want to do it? I mean, you'd done mostly theater up to this point, right?
Yeah, probably not by choice. I came straight out of drama school and just wanted to work, and ultimately I feel like I was really lucky that I got to work for 2 years in the theater, and I was then staring into the abyss of unemployment, and that audition just came into my inbox, and it was one that I felt like I fit the character description. And yeah, it was one of those ones where the audition process just seemed to go really smoothly, which normally I haven't found that to be the case. So none of those kind of decisions in terms of just doing theater or doing they've never really been decisions. They've just kind of happened in that sense. It hasn't been a kind of grand plan.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, speaking of auditions, Maitreyi, you must have killed it in your audition if you got this role with virtually no experience. I mean, what was it like?
Well, my best friend, she was the one who sent me the actual open casting call, because she's the one who saw Mindy's tweet. And I remember like walking from school 5 minutes over to our community center, going into the library for a good solid 30 minutes, Googling up what is a slate, what are sides, and figuring out how to work the camera that I got from my mom. Once we figured that out, we were rolling, we were flying. And yeah, I remember just the intent of me auditioning was actually just to have fun with my best friend. We just wanted the time to hang out with each other, do something that we found online and just saw where it went. But it was just, we wanted to spend time with each other. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Alex, how did you come to Zoe's? I mean, obviously you had a background in that kind of show.
I had just ended a run of a show on Broadway, and it closed, and I was very unemployed. And it was pilot season, so it was very convenient. And a pilot came across into my inbox, and it was Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. And they were like, your appointment's tomorrow. And then 5 minutes later, they said, JK, it's canceled. And I said, oh, no big deal, everybody. This is supposed to be it. And then an hour later, they called and said, we're sending you straight to test, and your flight leaves tomorrow. And I said, oh, okay, because I'm in New York, and y'all are in LA. So I got the first thing smoking the next morning, and I walked in, and I botched the audition because I forgot a majority of the lyrics to a song that I have sung time and time and time again. Like, I know that song like the back of my hand, and somehow in that moment it said, I don't know you, you don't know me, we're good, we don't know each other. And you know what, I made up for it in the interview portion of it all. It was like Miss America. If you fall on your face, just have a great answer to the question.
Nice. Yeah. Well, so Yvonne and Thomas, you both sort of came to your shows through stand-up comedy, right? I mean, Yvonne, you had done comedy before you'd done a lot of acting?
Yeah, but in all fairness, now I'm curious to know what song it was that you bought. Like, I want to, I feel like you owe that to us.
My Man from Funny Girl. Like an actual jazz standard. Like, I know the song.
God,
Like
wouldn't it have been?
everyone knows
What
the
if it was
song.
just like, well, the song was it's Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
I was like, I want to know this. Terrible time. You're here now. Okay, that's all that matters. But I was like, I can't. There's no way I can like leave the people hanging. Give them what they want. No, yes. So Issa and I actually found out about each other, or she found out about me when I posted something on like YouTube in 2008, and then like went on to live my life as a public health professional, not even thinking anything about Hollywood. And she was just like, oh, that girl's funny. And I just kind of kept that in the back of her head. And then I moved to LA in 2012 and started doing the stand-up route. Because I was like, one day someone's going to come to Comedy Club X and discover me, because that's how I hear it's done. Yeah, that never happened. So I was relegated to like emceeing weddings and funerals because that's what you do. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to honor the life of this great man, but he was great. Imagine telling jokes at funerals. I did that. And so I hosted I think like African fashion shows, and Issa happened to be at one of them. And I think it was at that moment where she was like, there's something about this girl. She keeps like kind of coming back in kind of her purview. And when I found out the show was getting picked up, it was a thing of like, hey, Black girl, you're killing it. Congratulations. Didn't think like anything of it, because in that moment I was trying to create my own show. And then I just was like, well, no one's paid me for my show, so let me audition. And 5 auditions later, it actually became a thing that I was now doing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, Thomas, how did you come to Silicon Valley back when it started? Because your background at that point was mostly comedy, right?
Yeah. I mean, at that time, as it is now, just performing and hustling and writing and trying to create and trying to get your foot in the door. Now I'm just trying to bash it open even further. I'm going to knock the door off, Steve. At that time I had just sort of, I was developing an animated show, and I pitched it to a couple people. And one of the people I pitched it to was Mike Judge and his co-creators at the time, John Altrill and Dave Krinsky. And they liked it, and Beavis and Butthead was coming back at that time. And so I was like, okay, that'll be where I go. I'll make this, and that'll be my life, and I'm happy with it. And then, in my show didn't get picked up, but as they were making that show, they kept saying, oh, we've got this show on HBO that it's about a bunch of computer nerds. You'd be great for it. And I was, what on earth do you mean? It's not as if I have a robust gaming headset in my at all times. And I always thought they were kind of pulling my leg, because that is so insane. Like HBO, getting to work with Mike Judge. They had me as the lead. That seems nuts, but sure enough, when I got the script, it was the character's name of Richard Hendricks was actually Thomas Pickering, which is my mom's maiden name. Like that, I told them that. So my audition was basically proving that I wasn't a total psychopath. But other than that, I kind of had the part. It was very fortunate that very rarely happens. I think it's a good lesson in making things, and you never know how it's all gonna connect. You just don't know. Yeah. There's a lot of serendipity in this business.
Yeah, right. Well, we talked about the biggest challenges you had this season. What was the most fun? Maitreyi?
Most fun, definitely like meeting everybody on like the cast and the crew, and just everybody in general, because every time I watch the trailer and I see everybody's faces, it makes me miss them a lot. Also being like the only Canadian. So they're all there in LA and I'm just away from them. It makes me miss them a lot, but I really love those guys. The first day we actually met each other, within the first hour, actually, Darren turned to us, like all the cast, and said, hey, do you want to go bowling? I've known this guy for an hour, and I don't know what in me said yes, but I said yeah. I'm like, okay, sure. I've never been to LA in my life. I don't know where I'm going. Let's go bowling. And we did, and we always do a bunch of fun things together. So I love those guys. That's so cheesy. Ugh. But yes.
Bowling's the first thing anybody wants to do when they come to LA, I think. So, Paul, what was the most fun for you in Normal People?
I feel like I wouldn't like categorize Normal People as a particularly cheery show, but I think it to tie back, I think meeting Daisy and working with Daisy is definitely that thing for me. Is so like joyous and fun and creative kind of at all moments, and it's one of those things that even if Normal People hadn't been successful or creatively had been difficult, I've met somebody in Daisy that is just a great person, and yeah, so that was the funnest part for me.
Mm-hmm. I do have to ask. I mean, the it's a show where the two people communicate best basically when they're making love, and some of those scenes are very explicit on both sides. So as you were there with your co-star both doing full frontal, were you thinking about how you striking a blow for equality in sex scenes, or could you not go there?
No, I was aware. I think there's I was aware. Lenny and Element, who are the producers of it, were very clear at the start, and I was like super keen on the idea that the nudity would be balanced, because we all know that it hasn't been for a long time and still isn't, but we had the opportunity with the show for it to be balanced. But those kind of political thoughts or it go out of your mind the minute you're kind of naked in front of a load of strangers for the first time, but and then it comes back again when you see the show, and you're like, I think I'm incredibly proud of those scenes, and not only in terms of what it is representing in our industry, but also that it's representing a really healthy sexual relationship in a way that doesn't feel pornographic or leading in any way. It's just two young people who are in love having a healthy sexual relationship. But yeah, they're tricky things to I always found the idea of shooting them prior to shooting them way more difficult than actually doing them, because we had an amazing structure put in place with an intimacy coordinator, and Lenny and Hetty, who are the directors, had a really clear vision of how they wanted to be shot, and also those scenes aren't necessarily just, oh, and here's cut to a big old sex scene. It was always driving the narrative forward, and those scenes really allow you to get into the characters' heads. So yeah.
All right. So Alex, I mean, what was the most fun for you in doing this show? Because in certain ways it's a very joyous show, but there's serious stuff that's being dealt with, and the scene that's devoted to your character. I mean, this episode that's devoted to your character, gets into some tough issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think the proudest moment, because joy is being proud, came from letting the show use my own personal story with my relationship with my faith and my church, and what gender identity is, and what sexuality is, and what faith means to all of that, and the actual temple, the place that you go to worship, and not always feeling welcomed, even though they're teaching and preaching love and acceptance, loving your neighbor as yourself. And to sit there and read a script that was not making fun of the church, not condemning the church, but still being like, hey, this stuff happens, was a beautiful thing for me to relive and kind of close that chapter of that hurt and that pain out of all of it. Because, I sang in church my entire life, and I always felt uncomfortable with being a gay man just in general, and having a pastor tell your family that something's wrong with you and that you're not good enough and that what you're doing is a sin, but then still wants you to get up there on a Sunday morning and sing and sing and sing and sing and usher in the spirit for them to make their job easier. It was kind of a trash relationship, and to kind of go back to that and realize that it had nothing to do with me. And yeah, it was very cathartic, and I love that part of it all.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yvonne, what was the most fun for you this season?
probably getting to do the wobble with about like 300 Black people in the middle of LA, and just having that a moment of Black joy, right in South LA. That was great. And in that moment, it was supposed to conjure up, the power of music and dancing to kind of remind you why you're friends with somebody. And I was like, wow, if only the wobble was strong enough to get us talking again. And it did for a brief second, yeah. And then it didn't, as you all might have seen. But no, that was fun. It was just like we had an episode where we basically had a big old party in Limerick Park. It was great.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thomas, particular fun moments in the last season of Silicon Valley?
Ooh. I'm not, well, I mean, yeah, we typically don't, most of our scenes are like in a tech building or at some kind of office. So when we went to this absurd version of Burning Man that our sort of lovable villain Russ Hanneman was making, and it was basically a carnival, and you had jackasses like myself and the rest of the cast running around and playing on the games with people, with the assistant director being like, don't do that. That was kind of neat. To me, I think this may sound cheese balls, but I think just one of the last scenes we shot was a monologue in which as Richard, I get to say I'm so proud of everyone, of all their sacrifices and all the work that they put in, which is kind of bizarre because that's also how I felt. And maybe that's not the most fun moment, but it's a very memorable moment. And when you kind of when you close the book, you want it to be satisfying. You want it to feel like you've been well read, and that was the moment where I felt well read.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder, all these seasons we've been watching your company, which is called Pied Piper. Yeah. How long ago did you know that it was going to end with a whole lot of rats?
Well, how familiar are you with the legend, Steve?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
That's why I ask.
Yeah. Man, I remember the table read when we saw sort of all read that together, and it was one of those beautiful moments of like, yes, of course, literal, actual rats. That's what the technology has done. It's brought rats from the sewers onto the streets. Spoiler alert, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty satisfying, kind of just, and when you're in comedy, you can get away with some ridiculous stuff. So it was ridiculous without totally jumping the shark.
Right. Yeah. Well, Maitreyi and Yvonne and Alex, I mean, you're obviously representing in some ways representing communities that have been underrepresented on television for a long time, and we're at a place now where people are more aware of the underrepresentation and all that's been happening. So I just wonder if at this particular time in our history, do you feel a special responsibility that, because you are sort of taking a role at a time when we know there's a need for greater representation?
Well, I think people have always known there's a need for greater representation. I think they just haven't done it, or they've done it in cycles. There was in the 90s, you had all the shows that had at least Black representation. You had Moesha, you had Fresh Prince, you had Thea, you had Girlfriends, Living Singles, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And then suddenly it was like, we've done that already. Now let's go. Like, are you guys satisfied? Are you not entertained? And then it was like, and then then it's gone. And then something happens, a hashtag happens, and it's a knee-jerk reaction, and it's like, diversity and inclusion. It's like they're not like we don't take our Blackness or our color off and then like put it on when it's like convenient to talk about again. And I think that's what Hollywood really should catch up with, and that diversity is not a buzzword. It's a group of people, several groups of people. And I think what we have a responsibility to is to be able to tell stories, and even just the question alone that needs to be asked is so overwhelming, for people of color. It's like, can we just make a show where we just like don't have an agenda? Like, can we just make a show? Like, that's real, I guess, progress, where it's like, can we just like be Black without like having to talk about something? And it's like, we're never afforded that opportunity. It's always like, but what are you saying through your art? And it's like, I don't know, man. What if I just want to laugh? What if I just want to laugh? What it makes you? We don't have that luxury. I had a friend tell me the other day. She was like, I don't want to watch anything useful. And I knew exactly what she was saying, because it's like, if it's something Black, it's like, and then the history of slavery in America. It's like, and then it's this thing, how they overcame this obstacle to achieve greatness, to face racism. Oh my God. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. It's all important. And the thing about it is, like, you have to tell the story, because if you don't, then who will? But then it almost becomes this kind of like diversity porn, if you will, right? The things that are, and I just made that up. I don't know if that existed before this, but I'm very proud of myself.
I wonder if it's on Pornhub. Hold on, let me just search diversity.
Yeah, fact check, diversity porn. It's this thing of like, even the voters, what are the things that have won awards? It's like, ooh, Black hurt, yes. Make it feel like, yes, please tell us more about that. Or white guilt, tell us we're bad. Yeah, we want to know. It's the thing that makes the voters, who are not always the people of color, feel like if we award this, which, not saying that they shouldn't be awarded, but if we award this, it makes us feel like we've done our job. But it's like, hey, will you also award the show that just talks about, I don't know, Black people being Black people in a city and just like living life and having experiences like everybody else does?
Yeah. Like, I know for me, like with the South Asian community, like from the get-go, before people even knew what the show was entirely about for Never Have I Ever, over 15,000 people all around the world wanted to see it happen. And if somebody can tell me that there isn't a need for realistic representation, just look at the numbers. 15,000 people of all ages, all over the world, just want this one show to happen. And I think for me, that sense of responsibility, all I want to do is just bring a realistic representation of a South Asian girl who was born in the Western world, because that's who I am. And that's just one story of the entire community. So if I could honestly just ask for one thing, it's just, by Never Have I Ever being what it is, hopefully, it inspires that 10-year-old kid who wants to be an actor. That would be great. But also, it makes producers, writers, all of those guys realize that realistic representation won't set you back. It actually might just help it. Maybe. It's just a theory, conspiracy theory. I don't know. But if it can just kick people to realize that we're not going to set you back, we're not going to lower your numbers, because you can check the numbers. Can't beat that. It's okay. It's okay to add a little bit of color. And I don't mean by adding color to whatever fits your checklist of token representation, because that's just disgusting and pointless. But realistic, people of color doing their thing. Maybe it's deep, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just about a brown girl who wants to get railed. Never have I ever. Right? And that's all I want. Because like with Devi, when somebody who's South Asian, who might be the exact same age as Devi, 15, says, oh, but I'm not really like Devi, like this, she's not like me. I don't blame them. I'm like, yeah, because not all of us were Devi. I wasn't Devi when I was 15. So I want to see a show have a brown girl and that character, if they met Devi, they would hate each other because they're not the same, because they're different. Just because they're brown doesn't mean that they would just be buddies. They would just hate each other. And that would be that. It would be perfect.
And that's progress.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, I think we should go to get some questions from the audience now. We'll have about 20 more minutes, I think. And all right, I'm going to have to move uncomfortably close to my screen to read this. Okay. Maitreyi, how valuable do you think open casting calls like the one you participated in are to increasing diversity in the industry? Should shows and movies do this more?
Yes. 100%, because that's how you get the right person for the role. And if it didn't happen, if that open casting call didn't happen, I wouldn't be in the show because I'm from Canada and I was also a senior in high school doing my own thing. Like I was worrying about my exams. Sorry. But yes, open casting calls need to happen because that's how you get new people in the industry rather than recycling the same actor for all these roles. And now you only have this one actor to look to for representation. So yes.
Okay. Paul, what was the transition like from stage to screen?
What was this transition like from stage to screen? I think this might not be a popular opinion, but I would never massively modulate what I would do on stage, on screen. I think there's little tricks, but I think the fundamentals of acting are the same. I think it's about trying to absorb the character and prepare the character as well as you can, and then deliver it and be in close communication with your fellow actors and the director. And I think those principles are the same. I did have to learn what a grip was or what buzzing when you're pulling focus and things, but that was a slow process of learning, and I don't think it's massively impacting on the kind of craft of acting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another one for Paul. Did you talk to people with anxiety attacks? I've never read the entire book. And what was the last scene you shot or Daisy shot when they said cut?
Yes, I did. I was about to say I'm lucky that I'm around a lot of people who suffer from anxiety attacks, but no, it's deeply unfortunate. But yeah, so I did, and I was able to talk to them, and they were very forthright with me, which was great. And the last scene we shot with Daisy was actually when we were cycling the bike sequence in Italy, but my tire got busted basically, and I had to jump off it and sit in the car. So it was quite anticlimactic. I was in the car waiting for them to call cut, but yeah, that was the last thing that was cut on.
Okay. Question for Alex. What's your dream acting or singing project?
It'll always be Effie and Dreamgirls, hands down. Just always.
Mm-hmm. For Yvonne, do you have any vision for Molly and her relationship with Issa moving forward? Did you approach the script differently this season knowing how much she evolved from beginning to end?
Do I have a vision for Issa and Molly? Just not to repeat this season, just not to repeat. I hope growth, because I think, we play characters that are constantly evolving. So for me, I hope that her character evolves into whatever version of her best self that is. But it is TV and they like it messy, so we'll see. Did I approach the script differently this season? I think I probably approached it the most honestly, because I too have experienced friendship hurts, and there's nothing, when it stings, it stings. And so I think I brought a bit of that realistic, raw, relatable emotion to it in a way that, in a new, fresh way, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. For Thomas, do you find your process preparing for improv, Middleditch, and Swartz influences how you approach your scripted content?
Only in the sense that, ideally when you're acting for, with scripted content, acting in front of the camera, let's say, or on stage, you want to appear as if these thoughts and words that are coming to you and been thrown at you are new and fresh and experienced for the first time, even though it's all completely memorized. So having it known and then sort of come off as a thought is always kind of tricky, but they are really two different beasts. On stage with me and Ben or whoever is a very absurdist, theatrical kind of sillier experience that I think if I just pulled that approach into my scripted work, I would be acting in another thing while everybody else is trying to create a very grounded reality. But yeah, capturing that spontaneity, I think, is a really important thing, and that translates from both.
Mm-hmm. Okay. For Paul, absolutely in love with you and your character, Connell. Question for you. If you could redo one scene from the series, is there any that you would? Which one?
Yeah, which did you really tank, Paul?
How long do we have? Actually, it's a strange one because I remember. Well, no, it's the end of episode 6 when Connell's sitting at the side of the pool. I remember watching it and talking to Lenny and being like, "Oh, do we have any other? Is there any more coverage on that scene?" And Lenny but it's that kind of weird thing. Like I was too close to kind of have an objective opinion, like of my performance. I'm too close to it. But if it was me, if I was the director, I would have changed or found another take with me sitting at the end of the pool, trying to ask Marianne if I can stay in hers.
Mm-hmm. To all, who is your role model and why?
Vanderbilt, because he built railways. Damn it! Never know how to really honestly answer that question.
Any role model in terms of acting or like in life? Because
Well,
there's so many.
I think you could. You know, I mean, the one thing you all have in common is acting. But I would say if you have a good answer that's not acting, go ahead.
Huh?
It should be easy. I feel like this should be easy.
I know. I guess I always. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, this might be a cheesy answer yet again.
All of us, we get it.
Yeah,
you're inspired by all of us.
Thank you,
guys. Like just this live, it gets me every time. No, like this might be really cheesy, but I actually really do adore Mindy a lot. Aww. I love Mindy Kaling so much, and I wouldn't say that like she was my role model before all of this, but more after everything, because I just know she always has my back. Like I always quote The Office around her, and I don't know how she tolerates me still. Like I'm really surprised she hasn't like cut ties with me to just get me away from her. But I always tell her, I'm like, you know what, Mindy, boss, you know what, you're my friend first, boss second. And it just always inspires me that I can do whatever I truly want. And me being South Asian, you know, one of the very few South Asian actors in Hollywood that are in like mainstream film and television, I always wonder, how the hell did you do this like back then? Like it's already hard, but how did you do that? And I'm just constantly in awe of how she did that, but also did writing and directing and acting. I'm like, damn, girl, you're so cool. So yes, I love Mindy.
I see what you did there. My role model is Issa Rae. She inspires me. I'm setting a theme. She inspires me to be a better. Seriously, no, Issa is actually pretty fly, and she's amazing in a ton of different ways. I think I'm inspired by how she keeps so calm when I know there's so much pressure on her. Like on set, she wears 1,000 different hats, and she shows up and does every scene like as effortlessly and amazing as possible. And then I tell her all the time, I say, your vision birthed several other dreams. And, you know, this season, Jay got to direct an episode, and it's because she had the vision for the show, and she stuck with it in a way that was so authentically hers that it made all of us kind of have ownership in it as well. So, yeah, Issa Rae is my role model. Okay. And I'm standing by that answer.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Paul or Alex, do you have anything?
Okay, probably like Michelle. Go. Issa Rae is also my role model. How she handles life and walks through life is. I said no, Michelle Obama, because I'm very petty, and when she gave us the quote, "When they go low, we go high," I kind of remade that. When they go low, I go lower. I'm kidding. Yes. Yes. When they go low, I go lower. Uh-huh. But she exuded what grace is and what Black excellence is. And that's all that I want in this life. And I want my children to know that. And I want my children's children to know that what Black excellence is, period, poo.
Period.
Yeah, I think I think I personally I'd say Lenny Abramson who directed, just because he, first of all, I feel indebted to him for what he did, but also just in the aftermath of it all, when it has been difficult, he gives he just gives incredible advice, and has been a gentleman, and he's a really great friend of mine now. So yeah.
Okay. All right. As an audience member, how do we help with cultural disparity, tokenism of diversity, etc.? There's a big question.
That's a big one.
That's a giant question. I almost want to ask them, how do they think they can help with it? You know,
better hit them with it.
You know,
I'll handle this one. I'll handle it.
Be my guest.
No, absolutely not.
All you, Thomas. This one's on you.
No.
I feel like we can all answer the question, because I feel like asking people of color, or diverse people, or you know, whoever, to be like, hey, how can we help with this issue? It's like, how do you think you can help with this issue? You know, what are some action plans? Hey, other people that are not brown, how do you think they can also help? Like, there's no wrong or right answers. And if there is a wrong answer, we can correct, we can amend. But I feel like so many people are so afraid of being wrong or being called out for being wrong. And it's like, hey, I'd rather you take a stab at it. You know, the first time I worked out, you know what I did not do a good job. My trainer was like, we're going to need more sessions. But then, you know, you keep going back, you keep doing the reps, and guess what? You perfect something that at first was hard. So I don't think, you know, I almost don't always think it's fair to ask the question of people of color, like, how can we do better? I think it's like, hey, how do you think you can do better? You know, it's kind of like, you know, if you have kids, it's like, what did you think you did wrong? Why do you think mommy's mad at you? Like, put the ownership on, like, hey, all right, you know what? I get it. And then we can work together to kind of build a coalition or bring change about. But give me some ideas.
Yeah.
Isn't it also like, you know, we were talking about this at the beginning, all these stories that we're so lucky to tell, it's escapism. It's your way to go put yourself in either in a situation that's totally different from yours, or something that you really identify strongly with. And if we either condemn or congratulate someone for just wanting to go hear a story, I think we're maybe on a bizarre track. I think the responsibility as an audience member, if I look at those words, enjoy what you enjoy and hear the stories that you want to hear. And it's up to us to give you as many options as you want, so that something really sticks with you. Is that full tone deaf or correct?
I would also add, be challenged to look in stories that you may not have known you wanted to hear.
Exactly.
You know,
change your perspective.
Yeah, because there is such a when you go to a buffet, you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
And good? Well, let me put both of them on there at the same time. And it's just like, maybe I didn't think these two went together, or maybe I didn't think I would like this, but I tried it, and like, I love this now. You know, it's always so interesting when white people who discover Insecure are like, I know we're not the audience, but I love it. And it's like, it's on HBO. Everyone's the audience. Like, if you got cable, the audience is really who can afford HBO and HBO Max. That's the audience.
Exactly, yeah. Like, just diversify. Like, same thing happens with Never Have I Ever, when it's like, oh yeah, like, I'm white, but like, I know it's about an Indian family. And it's like, I don't think losing a parent and, you know, being a teen is only something that South Asian people go through, but maybe you do too. Maybe. So why not try it? That's what I would say. Diversify, try something new, like watch something else that you might not necessarily see yourself watching at a first glance.
All right. Okay, I think we've got one last question for all, conveniently. How are you coping with fame and recognition? Paul, for instance, can't go for a run in the park or stop at his local market without being paparazzi'd. Oh, Paul, I think the questioner has been following you.
Yeah.
That extra detail is really wow. Okay,
I should know. I have the photos.
Evidence.
It's a very new thing. I'm not good. I couldn't give advice on it. I don't know what I can do to stop it. I've come home to like my family home, and I thought I got away with it for about a week or two, and then there was paparazzi in a different country today. So yeah, it's not fun, but it's something that I imagine you get accustomed to over time and find ways of making your peace with it. But I don't think I'm at that moment just yet.
Oh, look at me. I'm famous. They want to take pictures of me. Oh, they found me. I'm just kidding.
Okay, see you guys.
He was like, I stayed up to midnight for this. No, I'm just joking. That is, you can see how that's problematic and also a blessing at the same time.
Yeah, it's just
There's no one outside my house. I clearly haven't made it yet. I'm like, darn it.
It can happen in all different ways, the little reminders that people know you and have seen you on television. And I think it changes things kind of forevermore, and you will be changed as a result. It's just a matter of how you cope with it, how much you kind of let it affect you, and how much maybe you can recenter to the person you were before it all, unless you needed to change because the person you were before was weird in some way. I allow for all outcomes, but yeah, I think it's a very tricky thing. I think the business as a whole is a psychological game more than anything else. It's how you weave a very intricate business of self-worth and artistic merit, and then acclaim. It's a bonkers proposition to ask someone like, hey, what do you think when everybody's going to know who you are?
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
No, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah.
I will say, I'm just happy I live in New York City where they do not care. Let me tell you how much they do not care. You can be on the subway and they don't look at you. And I think that's a blessing in itself, because I really don't notice anything until I leave New York or the island of Manhattan, when I go home to Massachusetts, where it's not all accessible all the time. And it's kind of, you take what you want from it at the end of the day, really, sometimes.
I try to be as regular as possible, because I think what people don't realize is most of us are super regular. Like in like the most, like I still wanted to shop at the 99-cent store like after season 1 or 2, and Jay was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't understand. I'm buying groceries for cheap." He's like, "You're ruining the bread." I was like, "Have you met me?"
Get yourself to Air One, my friend.
I upgraded to Trader Joe's, and I was like, "Why? This is where I draw the line." And then, I have been to Air One, and I was like, "Who's here?" No, it's just constant quest to like remain as grounded and as I guess in line with self as possible, knowing that there is this visibility. But like, I don't know, I grew up with African parents. They let me know all the time. It doesn't matter. I have not, like, Mama, I made it, but it's like, yeah, but still, is it possible to get married? You're right. I still haven't reached the level of success that is
priorities.
So my African parents keep me humble. That's what I think.
For me, because the show came out in quarantine, I had somebody in an interview tell me, "How does it feel being Corona famous?" And my brain glitched. I was like, should I be offended? Like,
yes.
So I haven't really actually been able to get out much, to be very honest. So I don't really know what it's like to be recognized yet. I had a couple people recognize me before the show dropped, though, because everybody knew about the casting call. I just try to stay normal. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody asked me, "Hey, are you that girl from Never Have I Ever?" And I'm gonna say, "Why? Because I'm a brown girl?" "Oh, okay, yeah, because we all look the same, right?" And then I'm gonna be like, "No, I'm joking, homie. What's up? You want to be friends? Let's hang out sometime." So
I'm famous, but I can't go out yet to enjoy it.
I literally don't know what it's like yet, and I'm just living, playing my video games at home.
As you should be.
Okay. Well, I think we're out of time, but thank you all for being part of this. Thanks to everybody in the audience for being there and for participating. It was great to have everybody here. Check out Wrap Pro, and let's do this again sometime.
Thanks for having us.
Nice.
Thanks.